Good evening, everybody, and a very warm welcome to one more session on psychology. Uh, we have been talking about theories of personality in our series, and so far we have already spoken about Sternberg's triarchic theory in our previous session. Today we will be talking about Spearman's theory of intelligence. For all those who have joined us for the first time today, let me introduce myself. I'm Dr. Zareen Setna. I'm a clinical psychologist and associate professor of psychology. So, give me a second and I can move on to my presenting the screen and we can start talking about today's topic. Yeah. So, like I was telling y'all, right now we are talking about the series on theories of intelligence. And what we have been doing is we have been conducting these kind of series on various topics. So, we have already covered motivation and learning and so on earlier. And today we'll be talking about, today is the second part of our series on intelligence, where we'll be talking about Spearman's theory of intelligence. Now, before we talk about Spearman's theory, just a general discussion, a general definition of what exactly is intelligence, or how do you define intelligence. Now, if you are a student of psychology, then you must have observed that there is no single definition of intelligence, simply because something like intelligence is so vast and there is so much of research that has happened on it that it is difficult to put all of those concepts in one single line. And therefore, you will notice that most textbooks will have slightly different definition of intelligence. Just to give us a complete understanding of what exactly intelligence is, this slide will help you to understand it. So, intelligence basically is our ability to learn and understand and reason. Now, what exactly do you mean by that? So, when you read something, or suppose you're attending the lecture, like you're attending this lecture just now, okay, you're listening to something, or you're reading something, or you have watched a movie, or you're just observing things around you, okay? But whatever you are seeing around you, or whatever you're listening, you are able to understand it, you are able to learn about it from it, and you are able to reason. Okay, somebody told me something, but how does it happen? What is the cause? What is the effect? If A happens, will B happen? Okay, this is called reasoning. So, if you have anybody who has this ability of understanding and reasoning, is what we call as intelligence. It is also the ability to adapt to new situations. So what happens is we learn, okay? We learn from schools, from our books, from our parents, from our teachers, from our own experiences, right? There is constant learning happening with all of us, okay? All this learning then in turn helps us to adjust to any new situation, any new problem that you encounter. Okay, so if you're a student, then you have already learned quite a lot of mathematical formula. Now, when a new exercise comes in front of you, a new mathematical problem comes in front of you, you're able to apply whatever you learned and solve that problem. Okay, so your ability to make use of knowledge and your ability to use that knowledge to adjust and adapt, that also is intelligence. Intelligence is also the ability to take decisions, solve problems, planning, planning for tomorrow, planning for after 1 year, and so on and so forth. It is the capacity that gives you to, capacity to acquire knowledge, understand knowledge, and make use of that knowledge. Okay. Now, two very important things over here. One, everybody has intelligence. Okay. Every single person has intelligence, more or less, but everybody has intelligence. Okay, because everybody has some capacity to understand, to learn, and to make use of that knowledge. Okay, so please remember, intelligence is universal. And second important thing, if you have noticed, in this entire explanation on intelligence, nowhere are we using the word memory. or we are not saying capacity to remember. That doesn't come in. Why is that important? Because that is a big misconception we have. Particularly when we are young, and if you look around at students in your class, anybody who can remember better, we generally come up with, oh, he or she is very intelligent. Memory and intelligence are two separate things, okay? They are related slightly in the sense that if you can understand things better, it will help you to remember. But that's all. That's all. Okay. Memory has otherwise nothing got to do with intelligence. It is very possible to have very, very good memory, but general IQ could be very low. And opposite, it is very possible to be very, very intelligent, and yet memory could be slightly poor. Okay. So memory is completely different from intelligence. Anyway, moving on. Now, there are several theories of intelligence, okay? But we'll be focusing on the four most important and most popular theories of intelligence. Gardner's theory of multiple intelligences, Cattell's fluid and crystallized intelligence, Sternberg's triarchic theory of intelligence. Like I said at the start of the session, this we have already covered in our previous session. So all those who have missed it can go back to the YouTube. The recording is still available. And today we'll be talking about Spearman's two-factor theory. Before we talk about the theory, we must understand a little about the person who came up with this brilliant theory. So it was Charles Spearman, 1863 to 1945. So previous century. Spearman was a British American psychologist actually. Okay, British American in the sense that he was born in Britain but then later moved on to America. He was a psychologist and a statistician also. Okay, and that is going to be very helpful when I talk about him a little later. He studied under scholars like Wundt and McDougall. Again, if you are a student of psychology, or if you have heard about something called as Gestalt psychology, one of the very important schools of psychology, Wundt and McDougall are considered masters, pioneers of Gestalt psychology. Charles Spearman studied under these experts, okay? And not only did he study under these exceptional people, his students later on also turned out to be remarkably exceptional. He has taught people like Cattell and Wechsler. Cattell is the person we will be talking about in our next session because Cattell himself developed his independent theory of intelligence. David Wechsler is a man who gave us his very, very popular series of intelligence tests. Okay, so if you go to any of the career guidance centers or counseling centers, and if you have ever taken an IQ test, then one of the tests you've probably taken is Wechsler's scale of intelligence. So these are the kind of people under whom Spearman studied, and these are the kind of people Spearman actually taught. You can imagine a life surrounded by expertise all around. Because Spearman was also a statistician, he developed a statistical method of comparison called rank order correlation. Correlation is a statistical method that helps you to compare two factors. Okay, so for example, hygiene and health. If you have good hygienic habits, your health will be very good. Now, what is the relationship between hygiene and health? Okay, or for example, if there is more parking place, there will be less number of accidents in that area. Okay, so what is the relationship between parking space and accidents? All right, this relationship when you're studying between two factors is what we call as correlation. It is a statistical calculation, extremely important if you're doing research. One of the methods of calculating this relationship between two factors is what we call as rank order correlation, which was developed by Spearman. And that is why we also call it as Spearman's rank order correlation. Okay. And of course, his most popular G-factor theory of intelligence or two-factor theory of intelligence, which we are going to discuss today. So this G-factor theory is also known as two-factor theory of intelligence, and we will see shortly why it is known so. If you are a student of psychology, then depending on the textbook that you are using and depending on when it was published, Spearman's theory of intelligence can be named differently. So in certain textbooks, it is known as G-factor theory. In certain textbooks, it is known as two-factor theory. Please don't be confused. It is one and the same thing. Okay. G word comes from general. Okay. Now, what did Spearman say? Spearman said that our intelligence is not one complete whole concept. Okay. Our intelligence is made of one important part, which he called general intelligence. Okay. And then there are many other tiny parts, which he called specific intelligence. Okay. I repeat again. So according to Spearman, you have one major intelligence, which is general intelligence. Okay. And then there are many tiny intelligences called specific intelligence. And Spearman said that all these different abilities, all these different specific intelligence, all these different capacities come together to give us general intelligence. Okay. So if you look at the diagram on your screen, it will help you to understand, where you can see that there are different specific intelligences all coming together to give you a complete general intelligence. So when you say G-factor theory, he is actually talking about the general intelligence and what it is made up of. That is why his theory is known as G-factor theory. Because he is talking about two important things, general intelligence and specific intelligence. They are two different intelligences, or they are two different factors. And that is why his theory is also known as two-factor theory. Okay. So in very simple words, many different specific intelligence come together to give us a general intelligence. Let us talk a little more about general intelligence. So general intelligence is what we call as your average intelligence or your overall intellectual capacity. Okay. If you take a IQ test, all right, you will generally get a number. Okay. So or you will get a label. So this person has average intelligence, or this person has above average intelligence, or that person has below average intelligence, or this person comes into brilliant category, or that person comes into borderline category. Okay. If you want numbers, then anywhere between 90 to 110 is considered as average intelligence. Okay. If a person is if a person's IQ is more than 120, you call that person as bright or brilliant category. Okay. So what I'm talking about is, when you use these words, brilliant, average, borderline, below average, we are talking about general intelligence, a person's overall capacity of intelligence. Okay. Like we saw earlier, general intelligence is made up of many different specific intelligence. General intelligence more or less remains stable throughout our lifespan. Okay. So if a person has average intelligence, that person will more or less continue to have average intelligence throughout life. Okay. If a person has a brilliant category intelligence, the person will continue to have brilliant category intelligence. Tiny changes will happen with, age, with learning, with practice, with experience. Many different life experiences will bring about small changes, but those changes are always very small. All right. Overall, general intelligence continues to remain stable. It will remain same. General intelligence will show its effect on your everyday life. The way you plan, the way you think, the way you understand things, the way you solve problems, the way you take decisions, or the type of decisions you take. Okay, in all these everyday activities, general intelligence is going to impact. And like I said earlier, general intelligence can be measured by any regular standardized IQ test. Okay, if you want to find out your generalized intelligence, all you have to do is visit any center where there are qualified mental health professionals trained in giving you the test. Okay, please go to a established center and please get it done from a qualified psychologist or a qualified psychometrician. Okay, and if they are using a standardized test, then you will get a fairly good idea of your generalized intelligence. Okay, specific intelligence. Specific intelligence is very, very interesting. Specific intelligence is the ability for specific activities. Okay, so for example, your linguistic ability, how good you are with languages. Okay, so suppose a person has very high linguistic ability or very high specific intelligence for languages. What does it mean? It means that person has the capacity to understand grammar of every language, has the capacity to learn new languages and many languages. This person has the capacity to use language in a more beautiful, fine art form. Okay, this person can write lovely letters, speak well. Okay, can be a good orator, can debate, can write lovely applications. Okay, so that's specific intelligence for language. Similarly, a person can have a specific intelligence for mathematical ability. So obviously, that person will be very good in numbers, can understand calculations, can mentally calculate quickly, okay, can understand complicated formula, all right, can do accounts very well. Okay, a person may have specific ability for music. That person can probably pick up musical notes faster, can listen to a song and then repeat the exact tone and exact rhythm. Okay, has the capacity to learn music or produce music. Okay, similarly, specific intelligence for say cooking or designing or drawing or sketching. Okay, for anything. Okay, so specific intelligence is your capacity, your ability for specific and particular activities or particular task. Obviously, it is going to be different for everybody. Your specific intelligence will be very different from my specific intelligence. Okay, not only that, within the person himself or herself, each specific difference will be different. So in my case, for example, I'm quite good with languages. So my linguistic specific intelligence is better compared to my mathematical specific intelligence. I'm not very good with numbers and calculations and formula. So if you compare my mathematical ability and my linguistic ability, my specific intelligence for language is better compared to my specific intelligence for mathematics. Okay. So specific intelligence is going to be different for different people, and within the same person also, people have very high, very good specific intelligence in certain areas, poor specific intelligence in some areas, and average specific intelligence in others. Okay. Specific intelligence depends a lot on your hereditary factors, genetic factors, and training. Like for example, some type of abilities, like say painting and sketching, it has to be it is seen that it runs in families. If one of the parents or one of the grandparents had amazing artistic ability, then usually you see the child, inheriting that ability. Music, okay, ability for mathematical calculations. So some types of specific cooking, okay, some types of specific intelligence is hereditary to some extent, because we see that it runs in families. But training plays a very, very important role. Like I said, I'm not very good with mathematics and calculations and numbers. Okay. But if somebody teaches me with a lot of patience in a very simple, very easy way, then I can understand. Okay. There are very complicated calculations which I have understood because somebody taught it to me in a very, very good way. Or if I practice a lot, I will still understand. Okay. So your experience, the kind of teachers you have, the kind of schools and colleges you go to, who is teaching you, how they teach you, how motivated you are to learn, how interested you are in improving yourself. Okay. All these factors play a very, very big role. So suppose you feel that you are little below average in a certain area. Please don't feel disheartened and say, oh, but my specific intelligence in that particular area is low. Nothing is going to happen. No, no. Practice, experience, training, your own motivation to learn, your own desire to do well, all of that makes a difference. And if you really want to work, you really work towards it, then your average specific intelligence can actually become above average specific intelligence over a period of time. And that is why specific intelligences keep changing with age, with circumstances, okay, with life experiences. Your general ability or general intellectual capacity will remain stable, but your specific intelligences can change. I may not be able to cook very well today, but suppose I take 2-3 good coaching classes for cooking, then maybe I'll become a very good cook after 2 years. Okay. So today my specific intelligence for cooking is different, but in future it can change. All right. How do you measure specific intelligence? There are lots and lots of tests developed now which will measure very specific intelligences. Like earlier we spoke about this person, David Wechsler, one of Spearman's student. Wechsler developed a wonderful intelligence scale which measures specific intelligence, which will tell you exactly how good you are with performance tasks, how good you are with verbal ability, how good you are with mathematical ability, how good you are with imagination ability. Okay. So now we have very, very good tests which will measure particular abilities within you. If you're interested in finding out, again, you can visit any of the good career guidance centers where there are qualified psychologists or qualified psychometricians, trained people. And if they are using standardized tests, then you will get a good idea about your generalized and specific IQs. Now, I have prepared this slide particularly for students of psychology. Okay. So, if you are a student of psychology, I have given this slide for you. This is almost like a last minute revision for your examination point of view, and it will also give you in one single slide it gives you an explanation of an entire theory. So it explains how general intelligence is made up of different types of specific intelligence. So as you can see in the diagram, it is S1, S2, S3. These are just examples. Okay, musical ability, science ability, understand equations, ability to understand space and sketching, and so on and so forth. Okay. So this slide will particularly help you for your last minute revision if you are a student of psychology. Now, the theory is wonderful, but where do you use this theory? What are the applications of Spearman's two-factor theory? Obviously, you use it for educational assessment. Okay. For students, we generally, we look at the report card of the students, we see the marks, and then we label them. Okay. This child is brilliant, this child is average, this child is below average. But this kind of theory, Spearman's theory, avoids that kind of labeling. And this theory helps you to understand capacities of the child or the strengths and weaknesses of the child. Okay. Every child is going to have certain strong points and certain weak points. So if schools and institutions and teachers are able to understand the strong point of every child or the weak point of every child, then we can guide children accordingly. Okay. So a child may be amazing in linguistic ability, but may not be very good with, say, science or maths. Then what we can do is we can push the child towards activity where he or she can shine, like debate, elocution, essay competition. The child will shine in those areas, and that will build the confidence of a child. Okay. At the same time, you know that this same child is slightly weak with science ability or analytical ability or mathematical ability. So now you know, okay, this student needs little extra coaching, little extra help in that subject, right? So what we are doing over here is we are finding out the strengths and weaknesses of the student, and then we are pushing the child towards, enhancing the strengths and helping the child to deal with the weakness. So we are sort of helping the child in overall growth, academic growth of a child. This will help in placement and employment. Okay. Once you find out what your strong areas are or what your weak areas are, then now you can guide children, into during career guidance. When children are not able to understand which educational stream I should take up, or what kind of course I should take up for my higher education, or what kind of job I should go in for. Once you understand your intellectual makeup, it helps you to take that informed decision. Okay. If you know that you're very good with numbers and analytical ability, then perhaps you should go into areas like accounting, okay, or data analysis, okay, where a lot of calculations and numbers are going to be required. If verbal ability is your strength, then perhaps sales and marketing is your area. Journalism is your area. If imagination is your strength, then perhaps creative fields like filmmaking is your area. Okay. So this Spearman's theory helps you to understand your strengths, and accordingly it can be greatly useful in deciding which are the career areas which are suitable to your intellectual capacity. Like I said earlier, it helps you in understanding individual differences. Instead of labeling people as, oh, this one is dumb and that one is superior intelligence, instead of just giving that one single label, it helps us to see people as a complete whole. It helps us to understand that each one has got certain pockets of strengths and certain areas where they are slightly weaker. And therefore, it prevents shaming and promotes positive self-image. What happens particularly in school, with students, growing up students, what happens is we start believing about ourselves based on our report cards. So a student who is consistently getting low marks starts believing that I am a failure, I am useless, I can't do anything. And then comes shame, and then comes guilt. And then the student just stops, trying, gives up. No, oh, I'm just a failure, I'm just dumb, I'm just below average, I can't do anything. Instead of shaming a child, if you could tell the child that, oh, but these are your strong points, these are the areas which are really, really good. You are good in this area, nobody else is. Okay. It would promote confidence. The child could suddenly become, have a very positive self-image and start seeing himself or herself as with a lot of hope, with a lot of optimism. And that helps in overall growth of a student. Okay. So this, in short, is Charles Spearman's theory of intelligence. I hope it has helped you to understand this theory. In the future sessions, we will continue with Gardner's theory of intelligence and Cattell's theory of intelligence. Thank you very much for joining us today. If you're watching a recording and if there is something that you want to talk or ask or say, please feel free to comment and I will be more than happy to reply to your comments. Thank you for joining us and have a happy day. And we will now meet again in our next session. Please make sure that you keep your notifications on so that you do not miss any of our sessions. Thank you and have a happy evening.